his max heart rate went up from 171 to 188. Did we increase his max heart rate, or was his heart capable of beating that fast in the first place anyway, and it was just his legs limiting how far we could push his heart?
It's very difficult to accurately ascertain the real limiter, whether it's respiratory, cardiovascular, or utilization. So therefore, it's going to be hard to prescribe a training intervention to target it accurately. So one, can I just check that's an accurate summary? And two, what did you then start thinking was a better framework?
Yeah, so I'll go through the three systems and kind of give you the Cole's notes of how I think about them. For me, the cardiovascular system, let's focus on the heart. It's not just the heart, it's the pipes that go with it, obviously. But let's take the heart because it is a central part. We know it's the main factor in VO2 max, right? How much cardiac output you can produce. And honestly, to assess that, I would want to have a PhysioFlow, which is a device that allows you to actually quantify how much blood is pumping through your heart. So you can actually see in milliliters every beat and compare that to top athletes and kind of see where you lie on the spectrum. Because in my estimation, if you don't have a quantified measurement of this, it's very hard to say whether your heart needs more training or not. Obviously, you can compare it to other people your level or people at a slightly higher level, but heart rate is pretty variable, right? It's going to change quite a bit from one person to the next. It's going to vary depending on what mode of training you're using. Are you biking? Are you running? Are you doing eco bike? And so it's going to be tough to quantify and say, oh, this is a little bit behind, we need to train it. The best thing if you want to train your heart is just a lot of volume, varied intensities, and years of training. Like there's no shortcuts. There's no, oh, this protocol increases ventricle size by X, Y, Z. No, it's train a lot, train consistently, don't get hurt, vary your training, don't get burnt out, and then you'll have a bigger heart. That's kind of the Cole's notes of how to build a big heart. And I would say that the heart itself is actually rarely the limiter in and of itself. One example I can give is a CrossFitter, Alex, that I worked with for a full year. We did a full physiological test, and he followed the bike training I gave him for a year and came back and did another test. And what was really interesting is that in the same conditions, same equipment, same mask, same everything, on the second test, not only did he go 3 stages farther into the test. So the first test, and I used a protocol that is 4 minutes on, 1 minute off. And typically we go up every stage until failure. And typically people do around 10 stages. So I calibrate the test to each person so that they do on average 10 steps. Sometimes it's 9, sometimes it's 11. It doesn't matter. The point is to have enough data to do the interpretation and not need 7 hours to do the test. That's kind of the compromise that we're trying to find. So Alex went up, I think it was he did 125 or 150 at the start, and then he went up by 25s. He finished the set at 325 watts. He's a big guy. He's in the 90 kgs. And that was his initial test. Then we did a year of training. Nothing complicated. We did some pyramidal training for 3 months. Then we did some polarized training for a couple months. Then we did some sprint training for a month. And then we did the same again. And he came back a year later and he did the same test again. And he went up from 325 as the final stage up to 400. So he added 3 full stages to the test. Obviously, his lactate curve changed completely. But most interestingly, and back to the heart conversation, his max heart rate went up from 171 to 188. Wow. And again, I put that on the list. I can send you the graph. So did we increase his max heart rate, or was his heart capable of beating that fast in the first place anyway? And it was just his legs limiting how far we could push his heart. So that, I think that's an important question. And I can't say for sure, but based on my experience and what I've seen so far, I would say that everybody's heart is capable of beating much faster than we see it do in training. And that given the right metabolic demand, so very hard training, a lot of heat, those kind of things, you can probably push your heart way past what you think it can do, right? Now so in that case, when it comes to the heart, it's always going to be the legs that limit the heart, because it is about the metabolic center which is the muscle itself, right? I really see that there's the muscle on one side, which is where oxygen is used and where all the energy systems exist, and then there's the rest of the body, the systemic aspect of the breathing, the heart, the vascular system that feeds the muscle essentially. So you could think about those two separate sides. But the heart for me is, yes, you can make your heart bigger, and that is going to increase your VO2 max and increase your oxygen transport and increase your performance and endurance. But we can't quantify that directly without those really expensive tools. And even then, it's always going to be the muscle that limits the heart in a way, right? The only moment where I've seen the heart limit someone, I don't even know if it's the heart, but it's more just the difficulty of exercise in general, is with beginners, because they're just not used to training or not used to training hard, to the point where it's not their legs that give out, it's not their breathing that gives out, it's just that they're tired and that it's too much and that they can't push past that, which is typically not the case with people that train regularly, because they can go beyond that. And so now it's going to be something physiological that's going to manifest itself, right? So there's a heart on one side. The muscle for me is always going to be the ultimate limiter when it comes to endurance performance. But obviously the breathing, as we said before, can obviously play a part. And the interesting thing about the respiratory system is that it is tightly coupled to our perception, meaning that your brain reads your breathing, and if you're breathing fast, your brain reads that as it's hard. So by training your respiratory system, learning how to manipulate your breathing, lower your breathing frequency, increase your breathing volume, you can have better control over your mind in training, and make sure that your brain doesn't think that it's panicking because you're hyperventilating and you can't control your breathing. Typically, and people feel that in training, when you lose your breathing, you're close to the end, because typically shortly after, your brain just says, okay, tap out. Because you just can't control things anymore. If you can keep your breathing under control, it's going to completely change your frame of mind, and it's going to completely change what you can actually do or think you can do, and then in turn do. So for the breathing, again, I would almost put it aside from the other two in the physiological conversation, because the breathing process itself, the transfer of oxygen from the lungs into the bloodstream, is almost never a limiting factor, unless you're an elite endurance athlete and you're pumping 40 liters a minute through your heart because you have an enormous heart. And then at that point, the capillaries inside or on the lining of the lungs, the red blood cells go single file inside the capillaries because it's so small, right? That's what it's called, microvessels. They're absolutely tiny. And when you increase cardiac output from a few liters a minute at rest to 40 liters a minute for those elite endurance athletes, imagine the speed difference that those red blood cells have to go through the capillaries. And there's actually a condition called arterial hypoxemia that some of these elite athletes have, which means that their arterial blood desaturates, meaning instead of 99, 98% that you would typically see on the thing that you put on your finger, it actually goes down into the low 90s and even dips into the 80s, because their red blood cells are moving so fast through their pulmonary capillaries that oxygen doesn't have time to jump in, right? It's like the cabs are going so fast that the passengers can't even get in. But apart from that situation, and apart from obviously environments, for example, altitude, where you have a reduced partial pressure of oxygen, which makes everything harder for the body, except for those kind of edge cases, the breathing in and of itself is not a limiting factor in the oxygen transport. Which doesn't mean that you can't train your muscles, respiratory muscles, and then make your performance better in general. So that's why I would kind of put the respiratory system a little bit on the side when talking about those limiters. And then when it comes to the muscle, well, you need it all. You need the slow twitch for the long, easy efforts. You need the fast twitch for the short, powerful efforts. You need the slow twitch to recycle the stuff that the fast twitch produces in those hard efforts. So again, everything works together. You need it all, and you need to explore those different levels of intensity throughout the year intelligently, so that your body is fully conditioned and ready to do whatever you require it to do in your sport, whether it's CrossFit, whether it's high rocks, whether it's a marathon.